Thank you. Mr. Wittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Panetta, General Dempsey, Secretary Hale, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your service. Secretary Panetta, I want to begin with you and go back to some of the statements you made about this effort of budget reductions being driven by strategy, and ask you this. I know that part of that strategy is an increased operational capability and presence in both the Middle East and the Asia Pacific. Within that context, we're looking now about an additional SSN being moved outside the FITUP, and we know that in that particular theater, especially the Asia Pacific, the SSN is a very, very frequently utilized asset. Also, we're going to be pushing the SSBNX 2 years further down the road, so it's not going to be operational or deployable until at least the 2020s. And we're going to have a significant period of time where we have a reduced number of ballistic missile submarines in a time where we know that's a very critical element to our nuclear triad. Looking at those things strategically and where we are re-emphasizing our efforts, that seems to be counter to that. And I would ask this, with that in mind, have we looked at, and can you tell me from the perspective of China, can you tell me how many subs they are building per year and how many submarines they will have in FY17 and beyond, just to have a comparison as to where we are going to be strategically?
If I could, Congressman, we should take that one for the record and make it in a classified setting.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
But clearly, our goal here was to not only maintain but to strengthen our presence in the Pacific. That's the reason, frankly, we maintained 11 carriers. The Navy assures me that we have a more than adequate submarine fleet to be able to accompany our forces there. I mean, we have delayed the Ohio class based on costs and trying to make sure that we could control those cost overruns as we went through the process. But I can assure you we're still committed to getting that online.
Okay. Well, another issue, too, there with our fleet is we're looking at the reduction in the size of the fleet. You talked about the 7 cruisers that are going to be brought out because of the cost of modernizing them to a BMD platform. But you're also looking, too, at a fleet that's been really pushed. We're talking about maintenance that's been put off. So many ships, as far as their A-sub-O, their operational availability, is really being pushed. If we're looking at that in a strategy that denotes more challenges there in the future, especially with our naval capability, and just having been to an exercise, Bold Alligator, and looking at our operational capability within the Marine Corps that's necessitated by ships, and looking also at our amphibious ship decline in numbers, I would ask, too, how are we going to reconcile that with operational availability, with ship availability based on backlog of maintenance, and our L-class ships essentially going down, yet we're going to be emphasizing that capability as part of our strategy? How do we fix, or how do we address that, what I see as a conflict?
If I could take a shot at that one, Congressman. You're talking about a specific single service. In this case, you're talking about the Navy. I mentioned in my opening comment, we really need to think about this as a joint force, and what we're doing as service chiefs and as joint chiefs is looking at our war plans and determining how we meet the demands of the war plans innovatively, differently, creatively, and integrate those capabilities that we didn't have 10 years ago. So while it might seem that the Navy actually is, as part of this joint force, has actually benefited from this new strategy as it shifted to the Pacific, but it hasn't been without cost to them at all. And the entire joint force has to be appreciated to understand how we meet the needs of the nation in terms of the new strategy. Sure.
And I certainly appreciate that. I guess my concern is that with that re-emphasis in those areas and looking at this new strategy, while I understand the cross capability that's there, it still appears to me, though, is where we're going to be calling on our Navy. In many instances, the capacity and capability there is going to be pushed to the absolute maximum. We look at the number of MEBs that can be deployed and the things that we're asking our folks in the Marine Corps and the Navy to do in a joint atmosphere. It seems to me that they're going to be pushed in a situation where it may not be the most challenging of situations where we say, wow, we can't do all the things that we need to do. So my concern is if this is indeed being driven by strategy, And, Mr. Secretary, you spoke of increased risk. My question is are these scenarios, is it an acceptable risk? In your mind, is it an acceptable risk?
I think it is an acceptable risk. We're going to be maintaining 285 ships. We've got 285 ships now. We'll have 285 ships in 2017. In that next 5-year period, our hope is to increase the fleet to 300 ships. So our goal is to try to make sure that we have a flexible, deployable, and capable Navy that's out there.